The rain had been falling for hours, the kind that doesn't rush, but settles in, soaking the ground until everything feels heavier than it should. On a narrow mountain road, where fog clung low and headlights barely cut through the dark, a retired Navy SEAL slowed his truck when something unfamiliar caught his eye. It wasn't movement exactly, it was stillness, shape lying where it didn't belong. As he stepped out into the cold, boots crunching against wet gravel, he saw the outline of a German shepherd stretched across the road, wounded and barely breathing. Blood mixed with rain beneath the dog's body, yet its eyes remained open. Alert, fixed on him with a focus that felt deliberate. This was no ordinary accident. Something about the way the dog held itself, even in pain, suggested discipline, purpose, and unfinished duty. In that quiet moment, standing alone between the fog and the rain, the man felt a familiar weight settle into his chest. Some moments don't announce themselves. They simply wait for you to decide who you still are. The man's name was Luke Carter, and at 60, his body carried the evidence of a life spent answering calls most people never hear. Retirement had come years earlier, quietly and without ceremony, yet the war had never truly let go. His shoulders still held tension, his posture leaned forward as if bracing for impact. He lived alone now, far from bases and briefings, choosing. Mountains over oceans, silence over command. People who met him saw a polite older man with steady eyes and careful words. But they didn't see the long nights or the memories that surfaced uninvited. He had learned to live with them, not defeat them. That night, driving with no destination in mind, he believed he was finished with responsibility. He believed his days of choosing between action and consequence were behind him, standing. There in the rain, looking at that wounded dog, Luke recognized something painfully familiar. It was the same look he'd seen in soldiers who refused to quit even when their bodies said they should. And he knew, deep down, that the part of him shaped by duty had never truly retired. The German shepherd was large, older, and clearly trained. Its coat, once sharp and well-kept, was matted with mud and darkened by blood near the shoulder. One ear lay flat while the other twitched to distant sounds Luke couldn't hear. The dog's breathing was shallow but controlled, each breath measured, as if wasting energy was not an option. When Luke moved closer, the dog let out a low warning, not aggressive, but firm. It wasn't fear, it was protocol. Luke stopped immediately, lowering himself slightly, speaking in the calm, even tone he'd used countless times before. The dog watched him closely, then shifted just enough to shield something beneath its chest. That was when Luke noticed it. Wasn't alone in this struggle. Whatever the dog was guarding mattered enough to suffer for. Despite the pain, despite the cold, it remained on watch. Rain soaked into Luke's jacket as he knelt there, understanding fully now that this animal wasn't just injured. It was still working. And that realization made walking away feel impossible. Luke stayed there longer than he needed to, weighing. A choice he already knew the answer to. Walking away would have been easier, safer. He could have called it in, someone else handle it, and returned to the quiet life he'd built to survive. But the longer he looked at the dog, the clearer it became that this moment wasn't about convenience. It was about identity, about the kind of man he still was when no one was watching. He thought of all the times he'd stepped forward before, not because he wanted to, but because someone had to. Slowly, deliberately, he removed his jacket and slid it across the wet road, easing it beneath the dog's chest to keep it warm. The dog flinched once, then stilled, as if recognizing the language of care. That was the moment the decision was made. Not with words, with action. Luke Carter, retired SEAL, stepped back into duty without realizing he'd never truly left it. Behind, lifting the dog was harder than Luke expected, not because of the weight alone, but because of what it represented. The dog was heavy with pain, exhaustion, and a history Luke hadn't yet uncovered. He carried it carefully to the truck, every movement slow and controlled, mindful not to cause further harm. The dog didn't resist, didn't whine or struggle, simply allowed itself to be helped. Eyes never leaving Luke's face. During the drive, Luke kept one hand on the wheel and the other resting close to the dog, not touching, just present. The silence inside the truck felt different than before, less empty. At his small house near the edge of the mountains, Luke laid the dog down near the fireplace and worked with the same steady precision that had once saved lives overseas, cleaning wounds, applying pressure, speaking softly. When the dog finally exhaled and relaxed, Luke felt something loosen inside, himself as well. Trust had formed not loudly, but honestly. In the light of his living room, the truth became clearer. The collar around the dog's neck wasn't decorative, it was tactical, worn, and scarred by years of use. Beneath the fur, old marks told stories of training and service. This wasn't a stray. This dog had belonged to something bigger. Luke called a local veterinarian, and when she arrived, her assessment confirmed what he already suspected. The dog was a working animal, older but experienced, injured by impact rather than accident. As she worked, the dog remained calm, disciplined, enduring pain without complaint. When asked what to call him, Luke looked into those steady eyes and spoke the name without hesitation. Ranger. The dog's ears twitched slightly, as if acknowledging a title it already understood. That night, as Ranger slept under watchful care, Luke realized he wasn't just uncovering the dog's past, he was confronting his own. The days that followed moved slowly, measured by medication schedules and quiet moments. Ranger healed the way seasoned warriors do, patiently, without drama. Luke adjusted his routines without resentment, finding comfort in responsibility he hadn't known he missed. Mornings were quieter now, but fuller. Ranger learned the house. Luke learned the rhythm of shared silence. There was no need for commands. They understood each other without effort. Tending to Ranger's wounds, Luke found himself sleeping more soundly than he had in years. Something about caring for another being steadied him. There were two veterans, shaped by service, now learning how to exist without constant threat. Healing didn't come all at once. It arrived in small, meaningful ways. A stronger step, longer breath, a tail thump against the floor. And in those moments, Luke felt something close to peace. The miracle didn't arrive with flashing lights or sudden transformations. It came quietly one morning, when Ranger stood on his own and walked to Luke's side without hesitation. Not because he was told to, but because he chose to. Luke rested his hand on Ranger's head, feeling strength beneath healing muscle, and understood that the rescue had gone both ways. Ranger had been saved from the road, but Luke had been brought back to himself. The dog no longer guarded secrets or survival, it guarded a home. And Luke no longer drove aimlessly through the mountains, stayed. The miracle wasn't that pain. Disappeared. It was that purpose returned. 2 lives, once defined by duty and loss, had found something gentler, something lasting. At 60 years old, Luke Carter finally understood what service had been teaching him all along. That loyalty doesn't end with retirement. Healing doesn't mean forgetting that sometimes God answers our quietest prayers through responsibility we didn't expect. Ranger lay beside him as the sun set behind the mountains, scars visible, breathing steady. Luke knew they would carry those scars forever, but they would not carry them alone. If there is one truth worth holding on to, it is this. No matter how broken you feel, your story is not finished. Purpose has a way of finding us when we stop running. Sometimes, the miracle isn't what happens next, it's who we become when we choose to stay. Asterisk, if this rescue story touched you, subscribe to Storyverse Zone for more.